Good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. P.P. Mohanan and Dr. Patil and organizers of the PCO Society for giving me the opportunity on discussing pathophysiology of CAD in men and women. So I have divided my talk into two classes. One first half is basically discussing the pathophysiology of the CAD, and later on I'll be discussing what are the gender differences as far as the CAD is concerned. So coronary artery disease is divided mainly into two classic categories. So one is the chronic stable heart disease, so where patients usually have stable angina and they are stable, which may be having variant angina or silent myocardial ischemia, which is detected on exercise testing or other invasive modalities. While the other spectrum of the presentation of CAD is acute coronary syndrome, which includes unstable angina, non-ST elevation, MIST, segment mitral infarction, which can be sometimes fatal and can lead to sudden heart death. We all know that we have two major coronary arteries. One is the left and other is the right coronary arteries. And the left coronary artery is divided into two branches in the anterior descending and left circumflex, which mainly supplies the blood to the heart and which is the main supplier of the oxygenation. And since time tested, we have come to understand that atherosclerosis is the major cause of CSD in adult population. And atherosclerotic plaque disruption is the most common cause of acute myocardial infarction. More than 90% of the patients with CSD has evidence of coronary atherosclerosis. So this is one of the important pathologic mechanisms of the atherosclerosis and CAD. And most patients with CSD have one or more stenotic lesions, which is more than 70% by luminal stenosis, and therefore it leads to symptoms of angina and other dyspnea. And the plaque formation can affect one of all major epicardial arteries. So we can have one major artery or multiple arteries, and we can have multiple lesions if we do the angiogram. So coming to the pathophysiology of the chronic CAD, previously it was considered that it is a cholesterol steroid disease, but now we have come to understand that it is a complex interaction of risk factors, including the cell and arterial wall and blood and molecular passage. When the endothelium counters certain risk factors like dyslipidemia, hypertension, hyperglycemia, pro-inflammatory cytokinins, there is increased expression of adhesion molecules that promotes sticking the leukocytes to the surface of the endothelium. And the transmigration of these leukocytes then takes place, which are later taken up by the molecular monoclonal phagocytes and T lymphocytes, and later on they release various cytokines, and this leads to formation of the atherosclerotic plaque. These cells communicate with the smooth muscle cells, endothelial cells, which leads to the proliferation of the smooth muscle cells and development of plaque and progression of the atherosclerotic lesion. Major exchanges takes place with the help of prostanoids and leukotrienes, and the vascular muscle tone is regulated by the autocoils like histamine. So interaction of all these molecules is important as far as the pathophysiologic mechanism of chronic and acute coronary syndromes are concerned. Once the smooth cells migrate from tunica to media, there is interplay with the endothelium, and matrix metalloproteins are liberated from the cells, which leads to the hemodynamic inflammatory and autoimmune signals. And the imbalance with the cells and matrix metalloproteins leads to activation, proliferation, migration, and cell death, as well as new muscle formation, which leads to various pathological changes. And certain constituents of extramedullary proteins also are oxidated by a non-angiogrammatic diagnostic with the presence of sugars. So all patients who are diabetic, where increased level of sugar in the blood, there is non-angiogrammatic conjugation and leads to increased glycation of these products. Ultimately, there is calcification, as is seen in the bone formation. So some plaques may be calcified. And finally, there is cell death with the use of because of the apoptosis, and this leads to release of the lipids in the cell matrix. It leads to the formation of necrotic core within the atherosclerotic plaque, and this is the main pathologic lesion for the rupture of the plaque. So this diagram shows the various stages of the plaque formation or the formation of the atherosclerosis, which is the main pathologic mechanism of the CAD in men and women. So initially, in the presence of risk factors, the leukocytes adhere to the cells, and this is engulfed by the monocytes, and then the lipids are oxidized. There is formation of fatty streaks. Later on, the plaque formation takes place, and there is release of adhesion of platelets, which leads to liberation of certain cytokines, and therefore proliferation of the smooth muscle cells, and there is increased plaque burden, which leads to stenosis of the lumen, the coronary lumen, and leads to production of the symptom. So till this stage, the patient is asymptomatic, but they have underlying pathologic mechanism and they are prone to have acute coronary syndrome. But once the plaque gets serious stenotic, they become symptomatic. And when this plaque rupture, because of the various mechanisms like acute stress or the other risk factors, there is acute occlusion because of the thrombosis, and this leads to the acute coronary syndrome, which we know as acute myocardial infarction. So arterial remodeling is clinically critical component of atherogenosis, and we can have two types of lesion. One is the stenotic lesion, which I have described. There is inward progression of the plaque, and there is outward progression of plaque. So this is known as positive remodeling, and this is known as negative remodeling. So negative remodeling leads to stenotic signs and symptoms, which have different treatment modalities like PTCA, stenting, or CABG. While patients with positive remodeling do not have symptoms, but they can have rupture, and they may be asymptomatic till late presentation. As I said, stenotic regions have a small lipid core. They are more fibrotic and calcific, so they are stable. The main problem with this is they produce the symptoms of ischemia angina, but they do not produce any acute coronary events. While the non-stenotic lesions have positive remodeling, they also have fibrous cap and less lipid plaque. So, but they are prone to rupture and they can have acute penetration. Most important are the non-stenotic plaque, which may cause no symptoms, but once they are produced to acute shear stress, can lead to acute rupture, and they can present as unstable angina, so that the patient is unaware of their atherosclerotic disease and they can have acute coronary syndrome. These lesions usually coexist, and they may have, any patient can have multiple lesions, like a stenotic and non-stenotic lesion, and they may have non-stenotic plaque. So out of these, non-stenotic plaque are most important because they can have acute presentation, even sudden death. As far as the pathophysiology of acute coronary syndrome is concerned, there is physical disruption of atherosclerotic plaque, which accounts for almost all acute myocardial syndromes. And through and through rupture of the plaque leads to liberation of the substances in the vascular lumen, and it leads to generation of thrombus and acute occlusion of the valve. This leads to intraplaque hemorrhage, erosion of calcified nodules, and all of them ultimately leads to acute coronary syndrome. Rupture of fibrous cap is basically seen in 2/3 of the patients who present with fatal coronary thrombosis. So this is the main mechanism of acute coronary syndromes. And superficial erosion is seen in almost 20% of the cases. This is one of the main pathogenic mechanisms in diabetic and women, where rupture is not common, but superficial erosion is common, and they can lead to unstable tenor or acute coronary syndrome. Sometimes there may be erosion of calcium nodule, which can also lead to development of acute thrombosis. Consequent to the local plaque rupture or erosion, there is generation of thrombin, which may stimulate smooth muscle sand, and that leads to rapid expansion of the plaque. So if we do angiogram 6 months later, the angiogram may not be significant stenosis, but after 6 months, the patient may have significant stenosis. Sometimes intraplaque hemorrhage can cause sudden lesion expansion and acute coronary syndrome. So this diagram illustrates all these findings. There may be acute rupture of the plaque. So there is liberation of the chemical substance within the lumen. This leads to thrombin formation and generation, development of large thrombus and acute occlusion of the thrombus of the coronaries, leading to acute coronary syndrome. There may be superficial erosion, or there may be erosion of the calcium nodule. Both of these leads to the rapid or the subacute thrombosis, while there may be an intraplaque rupture, which can lead to progression of the plaque, but there may not be acute thrombosis. There are various determinants of determination of thrombosis or acute penetration, which may be in the fluid phase or maybe in solid state. So these are plasminogen activator inhibitor, fibrinogen, circulating tissue factors, thrombomodulin, urokinase like plasminogen activator, tissue plasminogen activator, and the smooth muscle cells. So interplay of all these elements leads to ultimately formation of plaque or formation or the presentation of acute coronary syndrome. As far as the category is concerned, the plaques can be divided into two, like a stable or unstable plaque. So the stable plaques are usually fixed. They are thick or they may be calcified, so they do not produce any acute catastrophic event, but they have chronic symptoms. While the unstable plaques are vulnerable and they can produce with acute coronary syndrome. And the rupture depends on the size of the lipid core and thickness of the fibrous cap. If the cap is thin, there may be acute rupture, and this leads to acute coronary syndrome. Apart from this, presence of inflammation, plaque degradation, lack of smooth cells, or all of these can lead to unstable plaque and formation. So this is the various stages of the CAD. Like the patient in the young age, you have the normal coronary artery with the normal lumen and smooth muscle, smooth endothelium, and there is asymptomatic atherosclerotic plaque. Once the plaque is more than 70% of the luminal diameter stenosis, they lead to stable coronary syndrome. And once there is a rupture of the plaque or erosion, they may present an unstable angina, non-ST elation MI, or if there is complete confusion of the lumen with the thrombus, they can have ST mitral infarction. So these are the various pathogenetic stages of the coronary artery disease, from stable to unstable coronary syndrome. And these are the main presentation of the CAD. Now coming to the gender differences in coronary artery disease. So what are the various gender differences? The cardiovascular disease develops 7 to 10 years later in women compared to the men. But this is one of the major cause of death in women of 65 years or more. And the risk of heart disease is often underestimated due to the misconception that the females are protected against the cardiovascular disease. This is one of the fallacies, especially especially in our country also, that we should always be suspicious of acute coronary syndrome or chronic CAD in patients, in females who have some non-specific symptom. Recent data from the NHS survey has also said that for the past 2 decades, the prevalence of mitral infarction has increased in women between 35 to 50 years age, while it is declining in the men. And in the European Heart Survey also, they said that the functional testing of ischemia and diagnostic angiogram and intervention procedures are carried out less often in female compared to the men. And this had led to the less aggressive treatment strategy and lower representation of the women in clinical trial. Furthermore, it should be highlighted that self-awareness in these women and identification of their cardiovascular risk factor needs more attention, so that we can have better preventive strategy as far as the cardiovascular events are concerned. So the role of menopause as far as the CAD in women is concerned. Before menopause, the event rate in the CAD is low in women, and patients who have early menopause, that is less than 40 years, they have 2 years less life expectancy. So it has important bearing on the life expectancy. Data from Framingham study suggests that it may be just a coincidence of the age of the patient rather than the direct event. But women's ischemia, that is the WISE study, has shown that there is 7-fold increase in the coronary artery risk with the menopause compared to the premenopausal event. And as we all know, estrogen has very protective effect because of the various mechanisms. And once the menopause arrives, there is change in the hormonal imbalance, which leads to atherosclerosis and intimal medial thickness measurement. Apart from this, there is a derangement in the flow mediated vascular activity with the menopause. So all these changes lead to development of atherosclerosis. Menopause transition is associated with worsening CAD risk profile. So women with menopausal age have clinically manifest CAD. They're older and their incidence is higher compared to the risk factors are higher in these patients. And at a younger age, smoking is more deleterious in women compared to the men. And this is the important consideration. The younger females who are smoking have more risk of CAD compared to the men. And smoking increases the risk of acute first mitral infarction more in women than men. So it is one of the major risk factors as far as the CAD is concerned in female. And in young pre-menopausal women, smoking causes downregulation of estrogen receptors. So this is one of the important risk factors for the development of CAD. Body weight may increase with first year after the menopause, and the central obesity may increase visceral fat. So there is change in the fat distribution with the menopause, and there are other components, metabolic syndrome, which may creep in. So all of these factors leads to obesity, and there is parallel increase in the prevalence of type 2 diabetes. And women with diabetes are greater risk of CAD compared to the men. And meta-analysis of 37 prospective cohort studies has shown the risk of fatal CAD is 50% higher in women compared to men who are diabetic. And the reason for this higher mortality is multifactorial, which may be related to the high risk factor burden, involvement of pre-inflammatory factors, small vessel size, and coronary arteries, and less aggressive treatment strategy in women. So diabetic females are more prone to have CADs, and they are less likely to get treatment. So they have to be taken care of once they have the clinical signs and symptoms suggestive of CAD. As far as the blood pressure is concerned, systolic blood pressure rises more steeply once the menopause sets in. And this is because of the decline in the estrogen level in the menopause transition. There is an upregulation of the renin-angiotensin system, and there is change in the salt sensitivity and sympathetic activity. So at older age, that is more than 75 years, isolated systolic hypertension is 14% higher in women compared to the men, and the left ventricular hypertrophy is also one. If the blood pressure is just borderline, that is around 140/90, there is a significant endothelial dysfunction, and the patients with hypertension, the female patients with hypertension, they usually have symptoms of pain, palpitation, headaches, and even sensation of hot flashes, which may be attributed to the menopause, but actually they are having another hypertension. And once we treat this elevated blood pressure, the symptoms go away. So we should be very careful in all the post-menopausal women as far as the diagnosis of hypertension and management is concerned, because this is again one of the important risk factors for the CAD in women is concerned. Hypercholesteremia is also one of the important risk factors, and at a younger age, this is associated with increased incidence of CAD. During menopause, total cholesterol and low density cholesterol, that is LDL, rises around 10 and 14% respectively. And this increase in 4 to 8% in the lipoprotein A levels also, which is also one of the important marker for the atherosclerosis. And it may be therefore important to reevaluate the lipid profile after menopause when there is borderline menopause value, premenopausal values. And after 65 years, LDL is compared with the men, so it is the same risk factor as for men. The SGL level is slightly higher in women compared to men, but this does not give total protection as far as the CAD is concerned. There are some special female-specific risk factors like hormonal dysfunction, which is commonly seen in premenstrual and postmenstrual women, and PCOS is one of the important cause of this. So it occurs around 8 to 10% of women, and it is an important cause of infertility. And women with this syndrome are likely to have increased chances of metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes, which are the two major risk factors for CAD. So patients with PCOS and metabolic syndrome, they have hypertensive disease in pregnancy, they are associated with increased incidence of CAD, especially women with eclampsia and preeclampsia, and patients with proteinuria after 20 years of age, the CAD incidence is twice high compared to the patients without preeclampsia. So women with placental syndrome or poor fetal growth also associated with increased CAD. So all these patients who have these risk factors, including PCOS, placental syndrome, or eclampsia, preeclampsia, should be carefully evaluated and follow up for any evidence of any CAD. So what is the sex-linked inheritance? Estrogen is said to stimulate phagocytosis, and that's why it acts as a protective mechanism, because it gives greater resistance to infection from infancy to old age. And that's why it is said that the sex chromosome is the protective for the females. It may be relevant as a gender gap with the direct evidence with C-reactive proteins, fibrinogen levels are there. And if you look at the base trials, that familial hypercholesteremia is around affected about 10 years later. The patients, female patients with familial hypercholesteremia are usually 10 years older, so they are somewhat protected compared to the men. And fewer older men, they have less allele of ApoE4. That is again one of the risk markers of CAD. And it has a significant protective role in the females. It produces the HDL cholesterol, increased HDL, and that is how the females are protected with the CADs at a somewhat level before premenopause. So what is the role of dehydroepiandrosterone? This is also one of the mechanisms of androgenic hormones, and it is said, and various data has showed that the high DHE levels in women are associated with increased risk of CAD, and the low risk DHES in men is associated with CAD. In men, weight loss and insulin reduction leads to reduction in the DHE, while in female there is no effect of weight loss or reduction of the CAD. So there is no protective benefit of control of diabetes and exercise in female, while the male have some protective effect of these effects as far as the dehydro and level of DHE is concerned. So what is the effect of the parity? And it is associated with increased CAD risk. This is one of the data which is increased around more than 1 lakh death certificates in England and Wales, and they found a significant increase in death from cardiovascular disease in multiparous women compared to nulliparous women. There may be some confounding. It may be associated with lower socioeconomic class and less education, but parity is associated with increased fertility. So there are some risk factors which can be there in these patients. There is indirect association of the weight gain and central obesity, decrease in HDL cholesterol, increase in insulin levels, or repeated hormone changes. Apart from that, stress, anxiety, and habit of parenthood, all these can lead to increased chances of CAD in multiparous women compared to the nulliparous women. Metabolic syndrome, as we all know, is associated with increased incidence of CAD, and there is twice as high incidence of metabolic syndrome in women and men. So there is twofold female to male sex ratio in patients who have metabolic syndrome, and they are twice more prone to develop CAD compared to the men. Low HDL and high triglyceride levels associated with metabolic syndrome is one of the important risk factors for the CAD in these patients. And prevalence of a small and dense LDL is more in female, and they have larger and less atherogenic LDL particles compared to men. So there is more incidence of atherosclerosis in these patients. Obesity is also associated with the increased risk factors like cigarette smoking, alcohol intake, or hypertension. and male pattern obesity is genetically determined. So if there is a change in the pattern of the weight in the female, especially which can be especially caused by change in the hormone after the menopause, there may be change in the fat distribution, and that can lead to increase in incidence of CAD in this patient. There is some evidence that serum hormone binding globulin can affect the development of CAD in women, and the estimation of this can be indirect marker for the heterogeneity in this patient. Level of cortisol and the cells difference in the fat is the main explanation why the females after the menopause are more prone to develop CAD compared to the men. So this is the graph which shows the difference in the mortality in men and women. If you see the undifferentiated mortality, the mortality of the CAD is much higher in women than men. So we should be very aware, and we should be very careful in diagnosing these patients and managing these patients. And the myth like the female patients are protected of the CAD should be carefully taken up. So in conclusion, I would like to say that cardiovascular disease is the major cause of death in women, and it is under-recognized and under-treated. And this is the main important point that should be highlighted. The role of sex behaviors, response to stress and inherited disease factors, especially hormone exposure, particularly in the utero, can play a role apart from the environment. And plasma estrogen levels do not explain the CAD risk in either sex. So genes that may affect the environment or common heritable risk factors from heart disease are working in both men and women, but they are more like effect of sex hormone. Sex chromosomes can be highlighted in female. Male pattern obesity is not caused by high testosterone level, but in men, the postmenopausal men, the stress hormone and androgen interaction may be an important, and that may lead to change in the obesity and the metabolic syndrome. But important to highlight is that greater awareness of differences in presentation of angina, ACS between men and women, and the gender-based interpretation of the diagnostic test is mandatory for all healthcare professionals to improve therapeutic strategies and outcome of women. And this has to be highlighted again, so that the females are treated and diagnosed in time and treated betterly to reduce mortality. The guidelines should be more focused on sex-related differences when it is appropriate. And furthermore, as I highlighted earlier also, that women themselves need to be more aware of their own risk factors. So they should be having the risk assessment time to time. And if they have high risk factors or clinical signs of CAD, they should be properly managed, adequately treated, so that we can reduce the mortality and morbidity, especially acute coronary syndrome like myocardial infarction and sudden death. Thank you very much, and for patient listening. And we can have any question answer we can have later on discussion.